Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Square Table Degenerates podcast. I'm joined here today by my regular co-host, Donn. Say hi, buddy.
What's up?
And from the Gemini, Joe Rickman is joining us as well today. How are you today?
How's it going, everybody?
And we're joined here by special guest, Mr. Raven. How are you today, sir?
Good. Hang on, let me make my sound better. Hold on, let me put my microphone on.
All right.
How's that? Is that better?
That sounds good to me.
All right. I'm doing good.
That's good. Where are you out of right now? Where are you living today?
Atlanta. I've been in Atlanta for 25 years, probably.
Okay, so you're out of the snow. That's a good deal for us. Now, I was reading online, it says you were born in Philadelphia. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born in Philly. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Philly or did you move to, at what point did you move to Florida?
All right. I lived in Philly till I was nine or 10. We moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a year. And then from Milwaukee, we moved to Florida, South Florida, where I grew up, where I spent my formative years. And then I went to the University of Delaware, took a semester off of college, joined the Marine Corps, went back to college, went in the reserves, got my degree, finished up, went into pro wrestling. By my end of my first territory was Memphis. I also finished up my tour with my 6 years with the Marine Corps. And then I was just strictly wrestling.
Okay. Now, growing up with your dad's, I was reading your dad worked at the National Enquirer. Did that introduce you to show business at a young age?
Not really. He was a senior editor and like the number 2 guy there for like during the glory years when they outsold every paper in the world. For millennials, a paper is a newspaper that people used to read before they had the internet.
I used to deliver newspapers way back when, man. I know what you're talking about. I remember that.
I hated it. I hated getting newsprint. Like, I hated the ink on my fingers. It drove me nuts.
I used to, on Sunday, I would fold the inserts before every Sunday paper was a real big set. And I would come out, my hands were just caked in newspaper. It sucked.
Yeah, that's why I hate jerking off after reading a newspaper, because you get newsprint all over your dick.
And you'd have a different color dick. When you were growing up, were you into sports a lot?
Yeah, well, at first I was. In Philadelphia I was, but we moved to Florida. There was no sports teams. For millennials, there were no sports teams in Florida except the Dolphins, one football team. Whereas in Philadelphia, they had sports all year round. They had everything from football, baseball, box lacrosse, pro soccer. I mean, any sport they had, you could find. Probably pro Chinese checkers. Florida had none, so I started doing drugs and then times changed.
What made you choose the University of Delaware?
Because I wanted to go back up north to the Philadelphia area, and it was really, really good schools. As my dad said, it's 5 stars academic, 5 stars partying. That's perfect for you.
Now, have you ever met Joe Flacco, also from the University of Delaware? Also who played for the Ravens, by the way.
No.
Okay.
When did he go there?
Oh, geez. It would have been 04. It was well after your time, but 04, 05 probably, I would say.
I was there when Rich Gannon was there.
Okay.
Oh, and Tony Tolbert. I got in a fight with him one time.
Oh, nice.
We got in a fight outside of 7-Eleven. I forget. I think my buddy started it. Started talking trash, and then we ended up locking up somehow, and that was about it. And then the cops came.
Nice. What was the end result? Did you get out of it?
Yeah. The cops were coming, so we just drove away, and he drove away, and we never saw each other again.
Okay. Now we're a veteran.
He had a pretty good career, from what I understand.
Okay. Tony Tolbert was really good. Tolbert was pretty good. I know Rich Gannon was a Super Bowl winner, didn't he? Super Bowl trophy?
Yeah.
For Oakland or Tampa? Yeah, Oakland. But let's talk. We're a veteran-based show here. I was in the Air Force for 20 years, and I was in Iraq. And so I was reading about you went in the Marine Corps, Marine Reserves, obviously. Tell us about your time in basic, man. How was it back in the 80s basic?
Oh, it's brutal. Basically, but it was right after they stopped being able to beat up their recruits. Or at least that's what they said anyway. But yeah, Marine Corps boot camp's brutal. 13 weeks of hell.
Now, did you go to Paris Island or San Diego?
Paris Island. No, I'm not a Hollywood Marine.
What was you said you did your 6 years in the reserves, right? What was your MOS?
I started out as anti-tank. No, yeah, I started out as anti-tank, and then I became a bulk fueler, which is worse than being a grunt because you're a grunt, but you got to carry the giant fuel bladders.
Right. Now, would you say at all your Marine Corps background based your future characters in wrestling at all, or no?
No, I had nothing to do with it. I just wanted to see how tough I was. My two best friends went in the Marine Corps, and I wanted to see how tough I was. So that's kind of why I went. Just to see. I just wanted to make sure that I was the kind of person that if the shit went down, that I'd stand up and in fight or flight. I wanted to be a guy who would fight, not flight.
What rank did you end up getting? E4, E5?
No, I was in the reserves, so all I got was E4 corporal.
Okay.
Yeah, E4 is about all I was going to get.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Now, what made you get into wrestling? How was your times in the early independent days before you ended up signing with WCW?
I got into wrestling because I always wanted to do it, but I just thought, that's not something people actually do. You know what I mean? But then I realized that, why not do it? So so after I graduated college, I went to Larry Sharp's Monster Factory, and then I went into the territory system. I'm like the last guy to go through the territories that made it, to the show.
Right.
Because everybody who followed me didn't work the territories, and everybody before me worked the territories and made it to the show before me. Like Scott Hall would be one of the last guys to do all the territories too before making it,
Yeah, Scott Hall. I remember watching him in the early AWA days in the mid 80s. Now, what was your wrestling viewership like when you was a kid or in college? What made you first start watching wrestling?
I started watching him when I was in Philadelphia as a young kid. So
Okay.
I watched my Chief Jay Strongbow was my hero.
Okay.
And then I moved to Florida and became a big Steve Kern fan.
Okay, yeah.
And Dusty Rhodes and all that.
Yeah.
Then when I went to college in Delaware, we used to get the Watts' UWF out of Vineland, New Jersey, and every Thursday night. So it was like the Thursday night lineup of TV, and then UWF on Thursday at 10 o'clock. It was amazing. UWF was the best wrestling TV show ever made before ECW and Raw and Nitro came along.
UWF. We're gonna have to look that up. Eventually, those matches got to be on YouTube somewhere.
It used to be the Mid-South wrestling.
Oh, okay. I've heard of Mid-South.
Yeah, some of it's on the WWE network. They were eventually bought out by the NWA, I believe, in '87.
Okay.
So when you first got signed by the WCW,
WWE.
well, he was in WCW
WCW, right.
Yeah, you was in WCW first. You worked as Scotty Flamingo. Now, Paul Heyman was there as well. Did you have any interaction with Paul Heyman in
Not much.
WCW run?
Not really. Basically I went to Larry Sharp's Monster Factory, then I went to Memphis, worked for Lawler. Then from there I went to Florida Championship Wrestling. From Florida Championship Wrestling, I went to Vancouver for Al Tomko for a month. Then I went to Portland Wrestling for 2 years. Then I went to WCW. Then I went back to Memphis because it's like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can't ever leave.
Right.
And then from Memphis, I went to WWE as Johnny Polo. Then I went Then I went to ECW. Then I went to WCW. Then I went back to WWE. And then TNA.
Yeah, so you've been around the block.
Yeah, I can't keep a job.
That's like this guy. I'm just kidding. He's employed everywhere.
So when you went to ECW, that's where you developed your Raven character. What inspired that?
I developed it before I went to ECW. That's what got me in.
I didn't know that.
I based it on myself, like my internal issues, my struggles, all the thoughts, fears, anxieties that made up me. Then I magnified it by 10, and rest is history.
What kind of blowback did you receive from the Crucifixion Angle with the Sandman?
None. I mean, really none. I mean, they the Kurt Angle was there to get. They were there trying to get Kurt Angle to join the company because Kurt Angle knew nothing about wrestling, and which is amazing, which is unbelievable that he became a pro wrestler and became that good because he never watched it as a kid, didn't know anything about it, came to the show and saw me crucifying Sandman and thought that it was I cracked my tooth yesterday. 2 days ago. I keep thinking I'm going to whistle out of it. I can't go to the dentist till like Monday, so I got like a crack right there, and I keep thinking it's going to whistle, but it doesn't. I can't whistle anyway. But anyway, so what was I saying? I don't know.
Oh, you was talking about Kurt Angle was no. So he was the only. So was he the only person that really had a problem with the crucifixion angle?
Well, once he said something, everybody jumped on the bandwagon, like Taz and them, and and they said, you're Jewish, Paulie's Jewish, Todd Gordon's Jewish. It's why don't you make it a Jewish star? And go, well, if you made it a Jewish star, it'd probably roll away.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even think that was the most controversial angle with the Sandman.
It wasn't. Well, it wasn't that controversial. The fans, it was the right reception from the fans. It was the right kind of heat. It was, the silent kind of, oh shit, that's cool as fuck heat. I was there in the center. I knew, I know what fucking crowds sound like.
Yeah.
And I knew what crowds sounded like better than most people because I'd worked in Portland for 2 years, and for 2 years worked 15, 20 minutes in front of, a couple hundred people a night. You learn how to sense what they're saying. They can be cheering and it can mean, yeah, this is fantastic. They can be cheering and be like, all right, that's enough. Next act. They can be cheering like this is a sympathy cheer. And it's like how aloha means like 17 different things in Hawaiian.
Very long vibe.
The crowd's cheering means different things. And you have to really be able to, the old time wrestlers could really listen to that and tell. And today you can't because of 15,000 seat arenas. It's kind of hard to tell. But even so, you can still tell a little bit. But nobody really pays attention to that. They just listen. If it's noise, it's good. If it's not noise, it's bad.
Right? Yeah.
Now, during your feud with Tommy Dreamer, now that's obviously something that's well known and still gets brought up today. Did you realize it was going to be that big while you guys were in the middle of it?
Not the beginning of it. No, we didn't know it was going to be that big. Once it got going, I knew it'd be big, but I know you couldn't predict it'd be that big. That it would last, 20, what is it now? How many years? 90, 95. So this is 25, 26 years now.
Yeah. It keeps getting revisited a lot of times.
Of course. Yeah, we'll always feud. It fits our personalities. We love to hate each other.
Right. Yeah.
Now going back to your,
or we hate to love each other. One of the two.
Going back to, would you say you guys are kind of like the new, going back to the way back to the WWC days? Remember Carlos Colon and Abdullah the Butcher? Is it kind of like you guys just going to do that till you're like 70, 80 years old?
Yeah, but except I'm Carlos Colon, and even though he's the baby face, and he's Abdullah the Butcher because he's fat.
Yeah.
Now, when you had your tryout with I read that you had a tryout with WWF back then, WWF, now WWE, in like 1990 against the Birdman Coco Beware. How did that come about? Who approached you for that? Do you remember that?
They contacted me when I was in Portland.
Okay. What? Do you remember where that was?
I think I might. It was Cape Girardeau, I think, Missouri.
Okay. Now, did you? I couldn't find that. I know I didn't actually look for it, but how long did that match go? Did you like the WWF at that time? Did you think there was a future after that match, or was that just kind of a jobber talent enhancement thing?
No, I mean they brought me in to see. I think they thought I was a little young and not quite big. I think they thought I wasn't big enough because I was only 220 then, and I was like the smallest guy in the business. Okay. And then how did you end up? I'd only been working 2 years at that point.
How did you end up losing that match? Do you remember?
No, probably his finish.
What was Coco Board's finish? Do you remember?
I don't even.
Nobody ever got to see it.
That's funny.
I really couldn't tell you what his finish was.
That's crazy. There you go.
Yeah,
he was a good worker though. He was a really good worker.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. I mean, a lot of people joke about him being in the Hall of Fame, but I mean, there's places in business for guys like that.
Well, he was great in the territories, but it's size. It's a size. Vince had a size kick. You know what I mean? And if you weren't 245 minimum, you weren't getting a push.
No, we went to WCW. And
that was minimum. Most guys, all the guys on the roster were 270, 280 back then.
Was there now? Can I ask you about back in the day? Did a lot of those guys? Obviously they did because of later investigations. How prevalent when you went in there? Did you see people doing steroids and stuff like that? What was the deal with all that?
Yeah, people walk around with needles hanging out their ass. No, you wouldn't see anybody doing it. I mean, people, you're gonna stab yourself. You're gonna do it in private.
Yeah,
needles hanging. That's great.
Ridiculous question.
Now, with the size factor, did that lead to you becoming more of a manager, announcer when you was in the WWF in 93, 94, or was there other factors that went into that?
No, I'm pretty sure it was a size thing.
Okay.
They knew I could talk, but they thought I was too small at 220, 220 now is a big guy, as the average size. It's bigger than average.
Yeah.
It was a different era.
Definitely. So did you have any interaction with Bobby the Brain Heenan at all? I know he left shortly after you came in. Did you talk to anybody?
He left before I came in, I think.
Oh, okay. So did you have any like inspiration on like commentating, managing? Like did anyone like kind of like show you the ropes as far as like that goes?
No. I mean, if you have psychology, it applies everywhere, But I'm sure other managers, I'm sure other people gave me hints, and tips, and wrestlers, people always, they'll give you tips. That's a little circumcision doctor.
Okay.
Now we're here in Cleveland. If we didn't tell you that before, but when the Browns first moved to Baltimore and they changed the name to the Ravens, did you have any thoughts about that? Did you first hear about that? What was your thoughts about that?
I assembled a posse of lawyers to litigate my case, led by Conan, the barrister Conan, and his legal beagle team. No, but we used to just joke about it. Me and Conan would joke in the locker room that we were going to have a legal we needed a legal representation to follow my case. But no, it was a different sport. I mean, I couldn't have. It wouldn't have. No, my trademark only went so far. But Lawler was a huge Browns fan.
I remember in '96 was that SummerSlam was here in Cleveland. He came out in the Vinny Testaverde Ravens jersey and was trolling everybody. That was one of his best heel angles he did in Cleveland. That was so great. Now, when you were in ECW, was there any limits, or you just go out there and just do whatever?
Just time limits.
Okay.
Right. Now, what influence, if any, did Paul Heyman have?
How come the guy in the middle doesn't ask any questions?
He's working. The guy on the right is really, really well. On your left, he's the biggest wrestling fan of all the three of us, and so that's why he's.
I read a hell of a lot slower than the rest of them. Plus, I actually have a real job and have to do things. He sits on his ass all day.
What do you do?
I do security and maintenance.
Security and maintenance.
Yeah.
Do you make sure the maintenance is secured?
Hell no. I work for an Asian mall, so I walk around all day with headphones on while they speak Chinese at me, and I don't understand them. It's all good.
Is it an open air mall, or is it like a mall?
Oh, it's a mall.
Is it the dirt mall? Like the mall on the outside, the mall, like compared to the real mall that's like in the city, and then the dirt mall that's on the outskirts of the town.
Oh no, it's in the heart of downtown Cleveland.
Oh, okay, but nobody speaks English there?
No, everybody's Chinese except for me. I'm the only white guy.
You could pass for Chinese if you squinted.
The Buddha.
Yeah.
Really, you had to go with the fat Buddha of all things.
What else am I going to say, bro?
Always go for the low blow.
Yeah,
it's always a fat joke with this guy.
Yeah, you can't. Fat jokes are just fun jokes. You can't really argue with a good fat joke.
So when you went to WCW, and there's a story about Bischoff coming in the locker room and telling anybody if they wanted out of their contracts, they could just all they had to do was walk out and leave.
No. Actually, he said, Raven, if you're not happy, he opened the conversation with Raven. If you're not happy with the company, there's the door. So I quit.
So what made you so unhappy that you were willing to just up and walk out on that contract?
Because I felt like at that point I was in the prime of my career, and I was still behind. Like I wasn't being used like a top guy, and I didn't think I'd ever was gonna be because, there was too many top guys there. There was like 10 guys in the top 10. Page, DDP, Nash, Hall, Flair, Big Show. Who else?
Hogan,
Luger, Hogan, Scott Steiner.
It was loaded. It was loaded back then for sure.
Loaded, and there was like no way and so I was really upset about that, and so I was really vocal about it, which I shouldn't have been, but everybody else was vocal, so I just, unfortunately, I followed suit, and so he called a meeting. He goes, if you're not happy with the company, there's the door. So I said, all right, I'll go back. I figured I'd go to WWE, but he wouldn't let me go back. He wouldn't let me go there. So I went back to ECW.
Now, what made you go to WCW in the first place 2 years earlier?
The money and the exposure, and I'd done all there was to do in ECW. I felt like, I was there before I got there. They were just finding their way, and I got there like right at the perfect time, just as as everything started to click. I showed up,
right,
and then they were still doing it. Nobody believed in baby faces and heels at the time. They thought that everybody was a tweener, and I was like, no. I go, if people work as heels, they'll be hated, and if you work as a baby face, you'll be loved. And you have to have a baby face heel relationship to have great matches, because otherwise they're just back and forth, So basically I said, I'm going to be a heel, and everybody that's with me is a heel, and everybody that I face is going to be a baby face. And I reinstated, just through sheer force of character, the baby face heel dynamic, and that helped a lot. And then they kept picking up new guys, and things just kept clicking. The angle kept working. And then, went from Dreamer to Sandman, which was, the Sandman angle was even better than the Dreamer angle, really, in many ways, just because of what it explored,
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, but after that, I was like, all right, it's time to move on,
Now, whose idea was it to involve Sandman's son in the storyline? Was that yours, Heyman's, or Sandman?
Sandman's.
Oh, okay.
Kid's amazing. Tyler, 7 years old. He never missed a cue. Like I would, if I missed the cue, like he would nail it anyway. It's like if I didn't set him up if I forgot to give him the setup line, he knew when his spot was, and he nailed it. Every 7-year-old genius kid. And now he's kind of an idiot, but
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did he end up getting into the business? Do you know of, or?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he dabbled in it,
Okay.
Yeah, and the next son is jealous because he didn't get to play in the business like his brother, like Ty did.
Now, do you still conversate with the Sandman?
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't really stay in touch with many people, but whenever we see each other, it's like we're best friends, I mean, but we don't really stay in touch on the phone.
Now, does he
I don't
really
stay in touch with hardly anybody on the phone?
Now, does he really party like the legends are and all the tapes? And like I saw the ECW, the One Last Stand, and back in 05, he was drinking beer off of titties and everything. Was he really like that in real life, or is that just
yeah, but only on the weekends. During the week, he was a great father to his kids. He was a fantastic parent, but it was but on the weekends, he'd go out and get hammered,
Yeah. Now, another one of your great rivalries in ECW was with Terry Funk. What led to the decision of you and Terry Funk closing ECW's first pay-per-view, Barely Legal?
This is the main event. That's why it should have been on the poster too, but it wasn't because Taz made the posters.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be the main event. It was the world title. It was Funk trying to win the title one last time, one last roundup before he retired. Before he retired for the 14th time.
Yeah. Now, was there a little bit of would you have rather worked with Terry Funk, or because you'd figure like the feud with either like Tommy Dreamer or Sandman would have been a great way to main event the first pay-per-view.
No, it was Funk. It had to be Funk. You know, that was the whole. He was on those. You know, it was the last roundup. You know, it was his last shot at the gold. I mean, you know, there's no better way. Plus, me and Dreamer, you know, we could. Me and Dreamer could always come back together. Same with me and Sandman. And Sandman was in the three-way match with Funk and Stevie, my ex henchman. You know, so it still played into that storyline. You know.
Now, when you were doing them ECW matches with the weapons and whatnot, how did they just? I know that I've read that like certain fans were just sitting in every seat every week, and they would just, you know, give tacks and chairs and whatever. How did they decide like what weapons you use? Was there anything you didn't want to use? Like weapons were like, you know what, I'm not going to use that at all. How did that work?
Eventually, what they did was the fans would hand you stuff when you went through the crowd. Eventually, they started grabbing everything. Like the fans would hand it before the show, and then they would just load it up. And in the back usually, but fans would bring stuff, you know, and they would just, you know, if you didn't want to use it, you just walked right by, you know, you sold past them and you didn't take it. You know, it's like the best though was the frozen turkey on Thanksgiving. I was in the ring and I knocked Dreamer to the floor, and so he was out there and I saw the guy hand him a turkey. So I leaned my head in through the second and third ropes like I'm going to grab him, but really I'm feeding my head so he can throw the turkey at me. He threw the turkey at me, and it was frozen, so it went bonk. It made like no noise at all except bonk. And because the fans can only see it, they can't feel it. They can only see it and hear it. Because it didn't make any noise, they figured it was an uncooked turkey. They figured it was a cooked turkey, so that's why it didn't make any noise. So it wouldn't hurt, but it was actually frozen and knocked me unconscious. But it only knocked me out for like half a second because I was still standing when I woke up. I was like, gunk. What? And all I could hear was the crowd going, boo.
Oh, man.
They all crapped on it because they thought it was a cooked turkey because it made no noise, but it was really frozen. It hurt like a son of a bitch.
Now, in 99, when you returned, was ECW different than it was in 95 and 96 when you were there?
Yeah, totally different. No, I mean, yeah, it's totally different yet the same. But totally different.
Well, yeah, because in 99, that's when it's like signed on with TNN, and they were trying to become more of a national company.
Yeah, the only reason it didn't work was Paulie didn't have the talent at the company that he had before, the characters. And he really, you know, after 6 years of booking the place, he was burnt out, you know.
Did you kind of see the beginning of the end for ECW at that point?
I didn't think it would end, you know, but I didn't realize how the business was going to turn out. But I knew it was time to get out of there because after a year or whatever I was there, because it just wasn't what it was, you know. And I figure, you know, I was making a lot of money. I was making six figures, but if I wasn't making the kind of money I wanted, I figured, you know, either got to make money or be happy, one of the two. And I was starting to become unhappy with the product there. And so I wanted to, you know, I mean, he had a lot of guys that have talent, but it just didn't click with the audience the same way, you know, the Sandman and the Dudleys and, you know, even though Sandman came back, but like, you know, the Dudleys and then RVD was there then, but it was also, they were missing the characters that were the glue of the show. Like, you know, like the storyline, like Raven Dreamer, Raven Sandman, the episodic storyline where, you know, the dramatic consequences, it was good, but it didn't have the same amount of those, you know, because there was too many guys that were just new, but they weren't new like Sandman. When he was new, he was just so charismatic. I mean, it's not that he ever stopped being that charismatic, but you know what I mean. You know, some guys have it right away, and he had it right away. You know, Sabu, he wasn't there anymore. Sandman wasn't there. Dudleys weren't there. You know, I don't know.
The foundation was missing.
Yeah, it was actually doing better business than we had done before, but it just wasn't, the product wasn't as influential. That's what it was. Wasn't as influential anymore. There weren't the Benoit, like, Benoit came in for a little bit, Rey Mysterio came in, Juventud Guerrero came in, a laundry list of people that Dr. Death came in to put me over, Terry Gordy came in to put me over. And so there was all kinds of guys that were, it just seemed like bigger. It was so big, like to the fans. It just didn't have that magic for some reason afterwards. But it had guys like RVD who were just, stood out like nobody's business, phenomenal. But
was there anybody you refused to work with when you were in ECW?
I don't think so. Now, if I would have refused, Paulie would have made me anyway, just to spite me.
Now, how was your relationship with Paulie back then? Were you guys kind of like friends, or were you kind of? Did you guys kind of have like were you guys kind of like competitors, or how did that?
No competition. I was a drunken idiot, and I used to annoy the crap out of him, but we had a connection because we did I think we both done it was the best work I've ever done, and some of the best work he's ever done, the stuff we did together. I mean,
Oh, that's for sure. You
gotta have the right actor and the right director, and when the two of them match up, you can just produce magic,
Now, how would you say when you went back to the WWE after ECW ended? How did you feel how your character was handled at first?
I wasn't happy, of course.
So they just threw you in matches that were just whatever. I mean, how was your state of mind in terms of like your day to day in wrestling when you went back to
I was really upset that I wasn't being used well, but also I was also just got clean off of drugs, so I was dealing with that. I was starting to see a psychologist, for my mental issues, which was one of the best things I ever did. Because to be honest, at that point, I felt like my career was a letdown. Like I didn't feel like my accomplishments, I didn't feel were worthwhile. And it's funny. It's like I had a fantastic career. I mean, I'm not trying to brag, but I mean, I had an amazing career, especially for a guy that was, too small.
Right. Yeah.
And which is always weird to me that a guy 6'2", 220 is too small, but that's the way it is. But if anybody would have asked me, who had the same career, I would have said, man, that's a stellar career. But I didn't feel like that because I was never the world champion of the number one company. I was the world champion of the number 3 company. I was like 11th on a poll in WCW. There's like the top 10. And then like me, Conan, and Jericho were like, and Booker T were like right below that. We couldn't break into the top 10. And in WWE, I got used like, crap. And, not total crap. I mean, but it was not to the best of my abilities. But so I felt like my career was totally like a failure. And then I seen a psychologist really put everything into perspective, because she's like, if somebody else told you that they had that kind of career, would you say they were a failure? I go, no. And I go, then why do you think you are? I go, because I hold myself to a higher standard. And she goes, well, then stop. And I'm like, wait, you can stop? And like, it's easier said than done. But it's true. Like, I was the one holding myself to this impossible standard because, first of all, being the world champion in the number one company is apolitical, which I never played politics. I was terrible. I mean, I could have been good at it if I wasn't so lazy. But
right,
I never played it. I always had to say, I always had to prove I was the smartest guy in the room, even though I wasn't. But that's the last thing people want, is somebody showing how smart they are. Oh,
and, yeah,
it's hard. I was an asshole. But so that was part of the reason I wasn't going to make it. Also, part of the reason was size and height, and not the right kind of not the right kind of character. So, so it was something once I dealt with it though, I've been fine. You know what I mean? Like I've But I recommend going to a psychologist for practically everybody. You know.
Yeah.
Everybody's got baggage.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, to be fair, though, you said ECW was
Not to be fair, though.
To be fair, though.
Oh, to be fair.
Yeah, to be fair. If ECW in 95 and 96 had the exposure that WWF and WCW did, I think ECW would have been the #1 company in that time frame. I think
the whole problem was they were too big to be small and too small to be big.
That's
exactly it. I mean, it's in a nutshell. So they weren't big enough to hold on. They were too small to be big, which meant that they couldn't hold on to whenever they find a new talent. Like Paulie was amazing at finding new talents. Like he brought, if it wasn't for him, Malenko, Benoit, Jericho was already in WCW, but Malenko, Benoit, Rey Mysterio, Juventud Guerrero, none of those guys, nobody would have seen them on the in the American stage. You know what I mean? They were they were all way too small, you know, and so when Paulie brought them in, but then he couldn't keep them because he couldn't, you know, because he got offered way more bigger deals at other places. So he couldn't hold on to the talent because he was too small to be that big, but they were too big to be small. They were too big for a small company and too small for a big company.
Now describe WrestleMania X7. We'll set the stage. You get the Astrodome, Houston Astrodome, 65,000 people. There's a triple threat match. It's you, the Big Show, and Kane, two of the biggest names ever to wrestle in a hardcore match. Is that right for the hardcore title or something like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now at what point did you know that the gimmick with the golf cart was going awry? Describe all that for us.
Oh no. Well, basically the idea was I was going to get in a cart. Show was going to jump in behind me and start choking me, and I was going to drive around the building, and Kane was going to follow us in another cart, and we were going to have a chase around the building on the golf carts. Would have been amazing. But I felt like if the Big Show's 7 foot tall is choking me, I can't just drive straight. I have to swervy drive, you know what I mean? And the fence was right against the track that we were driving on, so I figured I'd swerve into the track and bounce off. But it didn't. Instead of bouncing off, it wasn't stuck to the side. It was just hanging, and the tire just fell off the curb. And so basically that ended the chase before it even started. Which really, I tried to lift the cart up to get it going again, but Big Show's like, forget it. I'm like, no, come on. He's like, no, forget it. And then so then I ran out to get run over by Kane, just to cover, you know, to at least get something out of it. And everybody thought I was dead until, you know, Kane thought he killed me, and then but I was fine. Didn't even hurt, luckily. But a weird thing I got told by a producer after the show is when I ran the cart off the curb that I cut one of the power wires, and if I would have went like a millimeter further, it would have cut power to the entire show and cut the show off.
Oh man!
How bad would have that felt if you were in the biggest stage of them all? You just cut power to the whole arena. Oh my God!
I would have been fired 6 ways from Sunday.
Now, is that the goal? Is that the best thing for any wrestler? I mean, besides obviously a world title, but it's like to wrestle in WrestleMania. Was that just describe that feeling? Was that pretty awesome for you?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Would you say that was like that'd be a pinnacle for anybody to get in the wrestling business? Is at least be on that stage one time?
Most guys that get in the business aren't ever going to be on it, you know, because it only happens once a year, and they only have so many guys and so many spots, you know. So, but, you know, I mean, most guys that get in the business are never going to make it to the show. You know, you have to remember that. There's only so many spots. You know, there's zillions of people in the business. You know, it's a wonder anybody can make it, you know, to the top of the heap.
Yeah, it definitely takes a special type of performer, you know, ability, charisma. Now, how did you feel about Vince McMahon purchasing WCW and then eventually acquiring the rights to the ECW trademarks?
Well, he didn't have my trademark. I owned my trademark, so he didn't acquire mine.
Right.
But I wasn't. I mean, of course, I wasn't happy about it. I mean, competition is always great, but that's what happened. You know, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, you get very jaded in this business. You know, and that's just one of those things that, you know, what are you going to do?
So did that was that part of the reason why you left WWE for TNA and Ring of Honor in 2003?
No, they gave me my notice. They just, they just exercised their 90-day clause and let me go.
Okay.
No, he was in the TNA.
Thanks for bringing that up.
But now, when you was in the TNA and the Ring of Honor and all that, is that you was still doing the hardcore stuff at that time?
What's that?
When you were doing TNA and Ring of Honor and all that post WWE there in 2003, 2010 or so, were you still doing the hardcore stuff at that time?
Sometimes.
How was it the environment in those smaller federations compared to like ECW? Was it kind of similar? Or was it kind of like I'm just a swan song type thing here?
No, it was. I mean, wrestling companies are wrestling companies. It all depends on the booker and what story. Whether the stories are good or bad. Wrestling is wrestling. It's the same animal no matter whether you're in a big company or a small company. It's just the level of money you make and the prestige and the glory and But sometimes you have more fun in the smaller ones. Sometimes you have more fun in the bigger ones. There's upsides to one and downsides to other. You get much more control. I get much more control over my career when I was in ECW than I did anywhere. But in ECW, Bischoff let me write my own storylines. Me and Saturn, and he gave us Dusty to supervise him, so that was awesome. But and then. It's one of those things, it's some jobs, some places you like to work, some places you don't, it's like ultimately it's like any other job, except it's much more larger than life and exciting and fun and a different, but what's that?
It was a lot more publicized. You're
it's a public. Yeah, I mean, at our best, we were probably B-level celebrities, and at the low end, you're probably an F-level celebrity. You know what I mean? But it's a great living, if you can make it, but it's very hard to make a good living at it, nowadays.
Now, I read you were doing some wrestling and.
No, let me phrase that. It was very hard to make a good living at it for a long time, after the Monday night wars ended, but only the top guys were making real money. But then now with AEW, it's the business is turning it's turning around a little bit. Pay's gone up, so that's great. The boys deserve as much money as they can get.
Now I read you did some wrestling in Lagos, Nigeria. Can you tell us any times about Nigeria? We had some Nigerian.
I've never gone to Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
That's somebody else.
Oh, okay. We got to change our Wikipedia. I was lying to me.
As it tends to do.
I'm starting with these ones. These favorite wrestlers.
So so you've been in the business for so long. Who was some of your favorite wrestlers to work with, and then did you really hate working with somebody like if Paulie or Bischoff was like, hey, you have to wrestle so and so tonight? Was there anyone who's like, man, I really don't want to be in the ring with them?
I didn't. I got to the point where I only like being with guys that could work. They weren't. I hated working with big stiff thugs. You know what I mean? Like guys who sucked, but big guys, especially big guys who suck, because they're like you can't move them. They're difficult to get. It's hard to get them to sell. They don't understand selling. Anybody who doesn't understand the concept of selling, I hated working with. Because to me, it's all about the selling. That's why I like Billy Gunn. He's huge, but he can sell. And he can move. But then there's smaller guys that they were like dead weights, So, yeah, I mean, I just didn't like working with big slugs.
How was it like working with Goldberg back in WCW?
Interesting.
Okay. So who was your favorite guy to work with? Was it Dreamer, Sandman, or somebody else?
Storyline wise, it was Dreamer and Sandman, and then just just a non-angle match. Just a a fresh match. It was just incredible, probably. And Shane Douglas and probably Mikey Whipwreck too.
Okay.
Now, if you could take any wrestler, dead or alive, throughout the entire history of pro wrestling, going back to, I don't know who the first wrestler was, who would you wrestle and why would that be?
I don't know. I'd wrestle. I'd probably wrestle The Rock because it'd be giving the most prestige and most money, but also because The Rock was a great seller. I love watching him work. He really had talent. He was everything and more. He was as good as a guy in that spot could ever hope to. Put it this way, he was better than 95% of the guys in the business, and he was a big guy, and so that's weird, because usually big guys are never quite the workers. But yeah, I'd like to work The Rock.
Now with The Rock, like somebody like that with a really, really cut physique. Now, when you guys are on the road and stuff like that, and you're working out,
what?
Do you guys work out like with or what was what's his workout schedule like?
Well, basically, you fly into the town, you go to the gym, or you fly into the town, check into the hotel, go to the gym, come back, take a nap, and go to the arena, and then you go out and get drunk and then start all over the next morning.
One of the
you already answered that.
The four ready. Oh,
yeah, you're behind, bro.
No,
Yeah.
You write the script and then you can't even follow it, man.
Yeah, give Dom some airtime.
Yeah.
So, you do stand up.
Yeah. Oh, you want to hear a bit I just wrote?
Yes, sir.
Here's a bit I wrote based on, remember that Abbott and Costello, Who's On First?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I've written my own bit. So let me get to it. Hold on. I just wrote it today. So guy walks up, he goes, "What band's on first tonight?" "Guess who?" "I don't know. Why don't you tell me?" "I am telling you." "Then who's on first?" "No, the who's on last." "I'm not asking you who's on last. I'm asking you who's on first." "Guess who?" I don't want to guess who's on first." "You are correct. Guess who's on first?" "No, I just told you I'm not going to guess who's on first. You just said who's on first." "So the who's on first?" "No, the who's on last." "I'm not asking you who's on last. I'm asking you who's on first. And I'm just telling you to guess who's on first. If you won't tell me who's on first, then tell me who's on last." "Yes." "Who's on last?" "Yes." "You're sure?" "I'm positive." "So yes is on last?" "No, yes is on second." "I'm not asking you who's on second. I'm asking you who's on last." "Yes." 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 "Yes is on last." "No, yes is on second." "Then who's on last?" "Exactly. Exactly who's on last." "Finally, now you've got it. I don't have nothing." Look, it's simple. On first is guess who. On second is yes. On third, aha. "Oh, wait. So you finally figured out you're not making any sense? That's why you said aha?" "No, aha's on third." "How do we get to third?" "Okay, fine. You want me to guess who's on third?" "No, guess who's on first." "Who's on second?" "No, who's on last?" "Who's on last?" "Yes." "So yes is on last?" "No, yes is on second." "Then who's on first?" "Guess who's on first?" "Aha." "No, aha's on third." "So aha comes on after who?" "No, aha comes on after yes." I don't even know what I'm talking about. I ask you who's on first, you say guess who. I say guess who, you say yes. So I say yes is on first, and you say no. Yes is on second. I say aha. Then who's on third? And you say no, aha's on third. So I say who's on third, and you say who's on last. I am going to strangle you. Listen. Guess who's on first? Guess who's on first? Yes. Yes is on first. No, yes is on second. Who's on second? No, who's on last? Aha. If you say aha's on third one more time, look, you're making me tear up. I just want to get in my car and start driving and crying. What'd you say? So I just want to get in my car and start driving and crying. Oh, they're on fourth. You've heard of the band Driving and Crying, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have to memorize that entire joke.
Well, it's really, you need two people to do it. It's a two-person sketch, really. But my buddy never heard of Driving and Crying. I was like, so he didn't get the last part. He's like, I don't get it. I go, never heard of Driving and Crying? They were pretty big for a while.
Yeah, stand up.
Yeah, you're going to have to memorize that whole bit. That's going to be the hardest part of it.
That's actually not for stand-up. That's like if I did a two-man act, like a two-man thing on a show.
Because
But
we both do stand-up, and the hardest part is like just memorizing the bits and getting up there and doing it.
That's true. That's true.
My problem is I just get too big before the show and I forget the jokes and I just stare out in the audience like a dumbass because I forgot my jokes because I got too high. It happens though. Now, when did you? How long do you still tour on stand-up? How long did you do that for?
I only do about half a dozen shows a year. I just dabble in it. I never committed to it, but I still write out material like when I think of something. Like the other day, I wrote, the protests are getting ridiculous now. I saw Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and a few others out there with a sign that said "Black Lagoon Lives Matter."
No. Now, I read that you're a big Kevin Smith fan. Is that true?
Yeah, I used to be. It used to be more so. He looks weird now with all the weight he lost.
Yeah, ever since we had Scott Schiaffo from Clerks on a couple weeks ago, but yeah, ever since I think it was the second Jay and Silent Bob, it was he did look kind of what's the word, trendy, like get more trendy, like when Howie Mandel got all weird with the soul patch. That's all turned out for me. It's kind of weird.
He looks great with the weight loss. It looks weird because you're so used to seeing him heavy. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure he's so much healthier now.
Now, do you watch football at all?
Not really. I watch a little bit of Auburn sometimes because my ex-wife / best friend, she's a big fan of Auburn, so I'll watch it with her sometimes. But I'm a big MMA fan. That's why I watch every Saturday night.
Okay. Do you? We're in Cleveland here. What do you think of Stipe Miocic?
Honestly, I never thought he was going to beat Cormier on the third fight. Like, I never thought that. Like, I could see the second fight, but the third fight, I was like, no way. Like, the second fight, Cormier was winning, and then Stipe thought of it, came up with the idea to hit him with the gut shots, and Cormier was so arrogant, he said, that he just didn't think to stop it until it was too late, and he was already doing a job. So I never thought that Stipe would be able to pull it off on the third time, but on the third fight, but he did. I have to be honest, I was disappointed. I'm a big Cormier fan.
Yeah, I started a group build a Stipe statue, man. We love that guy up here. He's a firefighter, I think, out in Valley View.
Yeah, and he still is. He still does it full time.
That's awesome, man. Now we're all Browns fans as you could tell, because we're in Cleveland. Now
there are no Browns though.
Well, they moved the new Browns. Now we have to put you on the spot. You're not a football fan.
That's right. Wait, that's right. They got the new Browns. When did that happen?
99. You were in your second stint in ECW was when the new Browns came back.
Wait, how long were the Browns gone for?
They were gone for 3 years. In 95 they left, and the expansion came out in 99. The 99.
I always thought it was like 2005.
It felt like that because the team sucked so much up until this year. But now your name being Raven, the Browns are playing the Ravens on Friday night. Monday Night Football. Give us a prediction. Who do you think's going to win the game, Browns or Ravens?
Oh, the Ravens will, of course.
Oh, boo, we don't want to hear that. Go to the ring rest.
So, now, like, you do stand-up, but there's chuckle sluts, I guess you would call them, which is the equivalent to ring rats. I was wondering if you had any good ring rat stories.
Yeah, I got tons of them. The most popular story is I'll just give you the quick version because I told it so many times. But basically, I wanted to get a slip and we were all extra feet up, and I wanted to get a slip and slide. So me and Saturn went and got some. We went to the gas station and got some. I don't know. I forget if we got a slip and slide or I don't think they had it. So I think we got garbage bags and soap on them, and we soaked them up. We had some strippers, and we all got naked. And so Saturn put on the Rhino, which was a strap-on dildo I had. But if you put it on your forehead, we call it the Rhino. And so he put the Rhino on his forehead, and then one of the girls was sitting at the end of the hallway with her legs spread wide open and naked, and Saturn was naked. And so I went to run him down the slip and slide into the girl, and he didn't go anywhere. Like he just kind of didn't have any speed. So then we got the fire extinguisher, and he was going to use that for jet propulsion power. So as I'm pushing, so I'm naked, he's naked, the girls are naked. As I'm pushing him down the hallway, he starts spraying the fire extinguisher for jet propulsion, which gave us 0 speed, and all it did was fog up the room. And then security came and threw us out of the hotel.
What city was that in? I gotta know.
I don't even hardly remember any of the details.
Nice. Now, do you remember? Now, us being in Cleveland, do you remember any Cleveland party stories at all? Any good times here?
I think the only thing I remember about Cleveland was I think I hooked up with this girl and had, you know, crazy sex with her. And then the next morning, and I was with a different company than Sandman, but he was in town the next day. I think this is Cleveland. Not sure. And so when he checks into the hotel that the next day or that morning, he wakes me up because because we're in the same because we'd been on separate companies, so we didn't get to see each other anymore.
Right.
And so I remember he had bought some like New Rock boots. So I put on a towel with no clothes on and the New Rock boots, and then I basically stole his credit card and bought a bunch of gifts at the for the girl, but not for the girl really. I just wanted them to be on the credit card, like it said, like, you know, a Valentine's Day gift, you know, or whatever. So it show up on his credit card so his wife would get mad.
So do you watch the current wrestling product? I know you mentioned AEW a couple minutes ago. What's your current thoughts on the business today?
I stopped watching it, believe it or not, in 2000 when we started, when they made the invasion angle and they did nothing with us. I really lost interest and got this. Really lost. Like, I just felt wrestling such a cruel mistress, and she was being extra cruel then. So I stopped watching, and then I never started watching again because I'm like a completist. Like, if I watch one show, I got to watch the whole show, and I got to watch every other show, all the companies. You know, I got to know what's going on. You know, that's like, you know, you got to keep it. You want to be, if you start watching, you want to watch it all. You know, you don't want to just watch some. At least that's how I am. And so I'm like, yeah. So I just never got back into it. And then, but then when AEW came out, I started watching that because it was new. And but then there's just too many things on TV. You know, there's too many things. I did wrestling for 30 plus years. You know, I've seen it all, done it all. I still like AEW. You know, if I'm flipping channels and I see it, I'll stay with it for a little bit. But but for the most part, you know, I kind of follow the business. You know, casually. Like, I have somebody send me, like, you know, what's going on in the business, like, you know, like notes. So I know what's kind of going on in the business, but I don't really watch it. You know, I don't know. You know, it's 30 years. You know, it's a long time. Hello.
And what do you do to keep busy these days? How are you dealing with the COVID and everything?
Am I freezing or are you guys freezing?
Everything froze for a second there. We should be back now, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it freezing in Cleveland?
It is. Well, actually, today's about 50. It was warmed up. We had like a foot of snow last week. It was ridiculous. It was crazy.
Yeah.
We haven't had that snow in like 10 years. But what do you do to keep busy these days? How are you dealing with the COVID and everything?
You know, I got pre-existing conditions. I've had a heart attack before, and I got type 2 diabetes. So, you know, so I don't. That's why I'm not working at all. But luckily, I'm okay financially. You know, knock wood.
Yeah.
Make sure I knock it good. So, you know, but I do a lot of, you know, I do a lot of podcasts like this. You know, I have my own podcast, The Raven Effect. You know, you can follow pretty much anywhere you follow podcasts. And if you think my stories are absurd here, the whole show is absurd. Like, you know, it's basically me and two guys that I'm friends with, and it's just a conversation between three idiots. That's what the podcast is. So, if you like idiotic banter, it's a perfect podcast. But besides that, like,
That's
pretty
much what ours is too.
What's that?
That's pretty much what ours is too. Idiotic banner and stunts.
Yeah, you have way too much format though. Like, we don't even have a format. We have less than nothing. We refuse to even. I refuse to put any effort into the program, which is what makes it so much fun because it's just idiotic. But
I refuse to do any show prep. Let's just turn the cameras on and go. I don't do the show prep shit.
Exactly.
It's less fun if you like put too much time into it.
Yeah, of course.
If I go on a 20-minute rant about something, I'm just ranting about it. Just let me be and let me get it off my chest.
That's a big chest to get it off of.
It'll take a while, bro, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Outstanding. Well, we'd like to thank Mr. Raven for joining us here on the Square Table Degenerates podcast. As always, like and subscribe. We appreciate your time today.
It's the Square Table Degenerates?
Yes, sir. Square Table Degenerates.
Your table's a rectangle.
Well, it folds up. When we first started, it was a square, and then as we got bigger, we had to expand, so now it's a rectangle, but still.
Basically, you're saying Dom is fat.
It has to fit all his ego is what it is.
That's true.
It's literally his big-ass forehead and his ego. We had to expand the table.
He's just mad because my IMDb rating is higher than his is.
But I've actually done more stuff than you. That's what's really messed up about
he
it.
did one movie on Amazon, and all of a sudden he's Mr. fucking Tom Cruise and shit like that.
I'm also still funnier than you.
Blah, blah. All right, appreciate it, my friend. We'll talk to you later, Raven. Thanks for coming out, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to air this tomorrow night at 9:30.
Thank you, guys. I had a good time.
All right.